Welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast podcast. I'm Patrick Miller alongside Wayne Pua, coming to you again after week 3. We saw week 4 this weekend. We also saw some history tonight, and we're filming on a Tuesday, October 4th now. But Aaron Judge actually just hit number 62 for the Yankees on the road in Texas. He sets the American League record for home runs in a single season. Passing Roger Maris at 61, Babe Ruth at 60. He still trails the infamous Barry Bonds by 11 home runs. But I did catch that at least some of the alerts that I had mentioned that Bonds' record came during the steroid era. So I thought that was kind of a nice little, emphasis to place on the end of the alert. But Wayne, I know we've been talking about this for a little bit of time, but what's your reaction to this overall? What do you make of Aaron Judge, his season? Just everything overall that we've covered in the past few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of he's probably the most likable person that's hit 60 some odd homers. I think is one of the biggest deals. You look at the Barry Bonds, who always had some sort of stigma with the media, whether it's fair or not. It's always debatable. Similar things, with the whole cork and steroids with Sammy Sosa, and then steroids with Mark McGwire. So there definitely is a lot of stigma, I guess, with those people. Just all having a truculent relationship with the media. Even Roger Maris, he always kind of is like the other guy compared to like Mickey Mantle. If you ever watched that movie 61, and read about and heard about like what the stories that they were saying. Roger Maris was definitely much more of the keep to himself type of person, whereas Mickey Mantle was kind of just the likable person, almost all kind of like Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez in a way, except Alex Rodriguez just has a loud mouth and is obnoxious. Maris was just kind of like kept to himself and didn't give the reporters what they wanted. So Aaron Judge, likable guy, seems like a good guy, and it appears, he's always been big, right? So appears everything, he's just always been big. So I was assuming that everything's legitimate. The record is all good and all. So like for a modern day baseball era, in terms of a player, like that's as good of a season and as good as an untarnished type of season as a hitter can possibly have, I think. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah. No, you're spot on. I mean, I feel like he might be challenging for the Triple Crown too, if I'm not wrong. I'd have to check his average and other stats, but I feel like his home runs and RBIs were definitely leading the way last time I checked. Yeah, what an incredible year. Going back a little bit to the steroid era stuff. I mean, MLB is really going to have to bring in perspective this idea of doing asterisks in some way, or to kind of bracket these guys off if these are records that still want to be celebrated. I mean, you've got to make that clean. I mean, you've got to make that wrong, like, righted in a way. I just feel, that we go into watching him, do this whole chase, and for tonight, and it's like, well, he's still behind, Bonds by 11 home runs. I mean, that 73 clean doesn't seem like it'll ever be close to being broken. I mean, think about the year the Judges had, and it's like, he's still chasing pretty far back for where Bonds is. And I don't know. I just think at some point that, once we get past all the Hall talks, if they don't make it into the Hall of Fame, Bonds, McGwire, Sosa, you got to rethink those records, because if you're not going to preserve them in the Hall and celebrate them as, all-time greats, like historical greats, then like, why do they have these records? Like, why are they still a part of those books? Like, it's kind of weird to me. So it makes this whole thing like anticlimactic in that, like, some sort of way. It's like, okay, we're all happy for Judge, but in the same sense, it's like we could be so much happier if all the other stuff didn't happen. But it's hard to like unlearn history in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, I think that's a conversation to have. Especially with anybody that is, I guess, I don't know, the steroids defender, or people that do believe that Bonds and McGwire and Sosa all deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. If that is the case, then let's just open the gates for everything else, I think. with regards to steroids, with regards to the Houston Astros. Like, are they equivalent? I think that's just the whole debate that everybody's trying to figure out. And I understand this whole idea that Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, they all had Hall of Fame careers even before that they were allegedly took steroids. I think that's actually a fair argument. I sincerely do. But then I definitely think that do we have some sort of punishment, or do we have just a bunch of asterisks on all the records? Or I think the idea is just remove it. Like, why? I feel like having asterisks are kind of like that's kind of like a half-assed way of doing things. It's like when this whole thing's with like Reggie Bush and allegations of like getting money and things like that when he was with USC. Like, they completely stripped all the records from there. I feel like if they're going to do that with baseball and MLB and having those records there for Barry Bonds, it's like you might as well just go all in and be like, nope, these records don't exist. You only hit X amount of homers, not 700, whatever. So I think that's maybe just how I feel about the whole situation there.
Yeah, it's like, why just stop at Pete Rose? Like, why is Pete Rose the one who gets completely removed from the game, and then after that there was all these other transgressions that have happened in sports in other ways, like you're saying with Bush. I mean, they stripped him of that Heisman. I think people that loved Reggie Bush in college, like, although he doesn't have that Heisman, still consider him like a former Heisman winner. So it's like you could still take those records off paper because you have a legitimate reason to, but anybody who wants to argue about it at the bar or on their own podcast can do that. It's just kind of like, hey, like, let's preserve the things that were actually in play here. And I agree. Like, Bonds and Clemens were totally Hall of Famers before, they decided to do all this other stuff, getting into drugs and all this other stuff to like, prolong their careers at an elite level. But it's like, no matter what, even if it was your last day in the park and you just decided to do steroids in your last game of your last year, I'm sorry, man, you still cheated. You still did it wrong. Like, you can't have like a 3.9 GPA and cheat on your final exam of college and then just expect if you get caught that like you're not going to be punished. Like, I don't know. Some things get slaps on the wrist, but I guess it depends on context. But when we're talking about like the most important records, perhaps in sports too. I mean, it's like you talk about baseball, like this whole thought about like the home run record. I try to think about like name other records in sports that are so revered, and it's like it's the hardest thing to wrap your hands around. Like, when I think about the all-time hits, home runs, I try to think about other sports, like the career points in basketball. I don't think it's like as close. Career touchdowns, I like the drive behind the Brady Breeze competition. I thought that was cool, but it's not breaking the home run record, whether it's a single season or all-time record. So let's get back to kind of like trying to preserve some of the things that have been established by the actual greats.
Yeah, and I guess one more thing out there. It's like, we tarnish the Reggie Bushes of the world for those things, but it's like, that a lot of those things happen off the field. So these records, I guess, from that sense, had less to do with some sort of performance cheating or anything like that. It was just much more about, there may have been money involved in that, or I guess, But at the same time, it's like he performed, he did what he was supposed to do, and no steroids or whatever were involved in that sense. So yeah, I just think, for the sake of, I guess, sports fans, it'd just be nice if there was a little bit of, I guess, consistency in how we judge, Hall of Fame type of players or Heisman winners in that sense. Just a little bit of consistency of like, hey, it's either you're all legitimate, or hey, if you have an ounce of illegitimacy in terms of your performance or whatever, then it's like, okay, then let's just strip the record completely rather than, I don't know, kind of half-ass it, I feel like.
No, I'm with you. I think that's definitely a fair point. Nothing else to really say about it. Just, I hope that we can just see a little bit more clearly going forward when it comes to, folks that are actually cheating and the things that they're establishing record wise or championship wise, whatever it is, personal titles. I mean, it's just got to go, man. It's just like, even retrospectively, we just gotta like kind of make good on a lot of these things that have been, tarnished, as we were saying. But, I guess sticking with baseball, looking at the South Side, we're wrapping up our year. I think we'll have a special episode for the playoffs coming up. But the White Sox, we had Tony La Russa yesterday announce his retirement, due to health concerns. he's stepping away from the Sox. He mentioned, some of his regrets over the years of not getting them, completely over the hump. But definitely, he appreciated his moments being with the White Sox and getting them to the, ALDS last year. This year we're fighting for 500. It seems like we might be able to get there, which is, I think something still to be appreciated, or like, given all the stuff that's happened this year, should be kind of respected in some sort of way. But, I've heard a lot of rumors and speculation about what could happen next, whether it's the manager to come in 2023. It's, what are we going to do with this team, this nucleus? We've talked about this quite a bit this year, but, Wayne, do you have any thoughts on La Russa and then, what's coming up for 2023?
Yeah, I mean, with Russo, like, hey, it always felt like, we always saw those memes of him just sleeping, it's like, hey man, just go, it's okay, like, we're okay. Let Miguel Cairo take over. He did an okay job. I know there was a 8-game losing streak that didn't help, his manager prospects, I guess, for the White Sox here. But hey, he's a Hall of Fame manager, whether it was with the White Sox mainly or not. So wish him good health and everything. But this was definitely foreseen for sure. With regards to the search and everything, I think we heard that Hahn basically said that he would like somebody outside of the White Sox organization. So if that's the case, then hey, great. Let's look and see and pop up all the speculation on who will be the next White Sox manager going forth. But I think whoever it's going to be, though, is going to come to I think a good situation overall. We've always been saying that the White Sox are probably like one of the most talented teams in baseball, but for whatever reason, the coaching, the inspiration, the hitting coach, they just could never put things all together, and they always underperformed. At least this season, it's funny, yeah, they underperformed, but then they're a 500 record type of team, so just goes to show, like, how much I guess a good manager, halfway decent manager, can help out there. So, but yeah, looking forward to seeing what candidates pop up.
Yeah, I heard the same thing from Hahn, which threw off my idea of who would be the next coach, because I think what you and I were talking about was Girardi, possibly a Joe Madden, maybe a White Sox, former player, something like that. But talking about going outside the organization, something that like really, piqued my interest. So I was kind of like doing a little bit of digging, especially on the context of like, he wants somebody who's been in the dugout over the last 10 years, who understands like the context of analytics and has been like part of a winning organization. But if it's not anybody we've already discussed, I mean, it seems like you look at some of the best teams of the last 10 years and start looking at, their bench coaches and other things. And it's like, Bob Jaron is the bench coach for the Dodgers. He was once the A's head coach. He's been to, at least some ALDS trips with the A's back in his day. Ron Washington has been kind of kicked around. I mean, he's getting a little bit older, but he has, World Series experience with the Rangers, and he's been, part of the Braves organization for a while as their third base coach, I want to say. And I know Joe Espada from the Astros has been their bench coach. He's been doing, interviews, I think, over the last couple of years for head coaching spots, and hasn't, quite landed anything so far for him yet. And then I know Hensley Mullins from the Yankees is their bench coach, but another guy I've heard, kind of in the mix for jobs over the last couple of years and hasn't, quite landed. But no, I think this could be really interesting, and I really hope Reinsdorf's on board with whatever Hahn puts, forward as far as like, here's our list. And I'm sure Kenny will play a part in, kind of discussing with Jerry, but also discussing with Rick. I feel like he's kind of like the bridge guy between, preserving the White Sox culture, but in the same sense, like moving into the future a little bit. So we'll see. I think the only other point I thought of as far as, La Russa's tenure, Renteria, and what, Liam Hendricks actually had to say was just that the team was lacking, an authoritarian figure. And I think he said it in multiple ways. He said, number one, our manager like really needs to take the reins, which is why when you mentioned Joe Girardi, I think that's actually like probably as close as you're going to get to like somebody who's got World Series experience, got the analytics stuff down, is definitely like a hard ass. Like I feel like Girardi would come in and like, definitely run a tight ship if that's what they're missing. But I guess this kind of segues into the 2023 portions, is what Liam was saying, is like we need authoritarian figures in like how we lead and how guys like keep each other accountable. We need guys who are like going to step in and like push each other and stuff. And I think that's something that's definitely missing. Like he was mentioning, it's nice to have it out of the bullpen. It's nice to have it every fifth day with a certain starter, but like we need position players that are like complete alphas that are like ready to, impose their will on folks. So it's kind of like, that's what I'm thinking going into this, next year and beyond. It's like, how can we kind of, retool our core and our supporting cast to bring in some guys with some real experience, with some leadership qualities to them. Like we are searching for a legitimate outfielder. I feel like, at least in right field, whether we bring in like an everyday type second baseman, an everyday type third baseman, barring all these injuries we've had, that's another part of it. So we'll see how they retool, but I'm totally cool with them looking at that core really hard, like we've discussed, and making like a really hard trade. Like if it's like, this team wants Eloy or they want Moncada, or hey, possibly it's like Tim Anderson, or we have to, maybe end our time with Jose Abreu. I mean, like these are the things that we're actually looking at now if we want to actually compete for championships moving forward, and not just be like the place where we establish like, those like household names. Cause I feel like the White Sox are very much like, give their guys a long leash and like make them part of the culture for a long period of time. And it's like, sometimes you got to be a little bit more cutthroat about it if you want to win games.
Yeah, I know for sure. I like your take. But yeah, and hey, like I'm ahead of my time, I guess, with George Girardi. I feel like, I think that, I mean, that's just how I felt. Like, they definitely need somebody that it just seems like they're almost too lax. I think was where I was going with that. Another candidate, kind of, I guess, quasi dark horse, but wondering if we can pull him away from the Nationals, is Dave Martinez possibly. That could be a nice pick, I think, if we're able to nab him. I think he's got one more year on his contract, but if we're able to score a deal like that, that could be something. He won a World Series, and the Nats are kind of going like rebuilding mode in a way. So it's like, if that's the case, maybe he wants to like actually win and be part of a winning team. And hey, he can definitely do that probably with the White Sox and kind of bring that moxie over. So that would be my like dark horse. But I think you mentioned all the names I was thinking of that were kind of outside. That also outside the organization, that also kind of like has like some sort of bench coach type of experience, that are just hot names going forth. So. But yeah, Dave Martinez possibly, or Joe Girardi, I think would be my top picks.
Dave Martinez would be awesome. I mean, I don't know if he's available. If I was, Rizzo out in Washington, I mean, out here, I should say, I wouldn't let that guy go. I mean, I think he brings a lot of different things you want. I mean, he comes from the Tampa Bay organization under Madden. Loved him during those days. Like Madden spoke the world of him then. He's kind of understood what it takes to kind of develop a team with the Nats. And then, once you bring on some more payroll and, see these guys kind of get to their peak levels, like be a part of a championship run. He's Latino, which I think is a huge perk if you're going to come to the White Sox and you can speak Spanish. I mean, imagine the kind of rapport you could build with guys that are, your cornerstones. You got Robert, you got Jimenez. Whether these guys stick is one other thing, but like Abreu, you just kind of go down the line. I mean, Moncada, a lot of those guys, I mean, it just seemed like the core of the team was mostly Spanish speaking. So outside of our, mostly our pitching staff, but yeah, I don't, there are really no drawbacks to Martinez. And then, especially because he's been part of the White Sox organization. He used to be an outfielder for us growing up. I used to watch him. So he knows Chicago well too. He was with the Cubs for a while as an outfielder. So, I mean, he'd be a perfect fit. If that happened, I'd be actually ecstatic, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens with this contract. But those are some good names. Did you have any thoughts on the player side of things?
I mean, I think it's pretty standard. Yeah, it's definitely one of those, like, I don't know if we really want to keep Andrew Vaughn out in the outfield and all that chasing fly balls. And that strongly is where, well, it sounds like Abreu maybe still want to be playing. So, it'd be sad to see him in a different uniform. But I think in terms of keeping that core piece and getting the best out of him. Like I think Andrew Vaughn probably deserves and has earned the right to, especially the season. He's probably arguably our best hitter, I guess throughout the season. And yeah, I think he deserves it probably if he wants to go to first base. More so. So that's definitely what I think. And then obviously adding some left-handed hitting, I think, I guess we felt really comfortable just having a bunch of righties out there and throwing in like, Gavin Sheets, I guess, as like your only lefty and some switch hitting hitters in there as well. But I think, yeah, having some sort of left-handed outfielder can definitely help. And, if we got to say goodbye to Yasmani. We got to say goodbye to Yasmani, but maybe an upgrade there, and a second baseman of some sort. I don't know if Josh Harrison plans on wanting to stay here or anything like that, but I feel like if we're able to upgrade, I think we definitely have to jump on the opportunity for that. So, but yeah, if we can get a left-handed hitter, outfielder, some sort, that would be great. Or see what we can do, I think, from internally in that sense too. So
yeah, I mean, I'd love to see, if we get to the off season, let's say it's Abreu, maybe we swing a trade with like the Milwaukee Brewers and we can bring over like Colton Wong to be our second baseman, something like that. Or maybe it's a package deal where we go to the Padres, who are prone to make big trades, and we can maybe pry like a Trent Grisham with maybe one of their starting pitchers, and then we, give them a Abreu, or maybe it's, Grandal's in the package or something. And, another team I kind of thought about was like Seattle, like maybe we flip, whether it's a Abreu or Grandal or something like that, and we can bring over like a Jesse Winker type who, it's like slightly disappointing for them, but it's like a fixture in the outfield, probably for most teams, and left-handed bat, good on base guy. I'm just trying to think of ways like, how can we get more athletic? How can we, maybe bring some new voices in, guys that have had, some sort of experience across the league in, playoff settings, or, something of the sort. Like I don't know what the perfect thing is, but I think athleticism is definitely one. I'd love to see Vaughn just like parked up at first base. I'd love to see Eloy out of the outfield, just playing nothing but DH for the rest of his career. I don't want to see that guy injured. I mean, feeling like looking at, the amount of games that some of our core pieces missed this year. I actually did a quick look around last week at, some of our core players, and I wrote it down. Still kind of thumbing through it, but of our 5 like best players, we talk about like Jimenez, Moncada, Tim Anderson, Luis Robert, and one other guy. I mean, they didn't play 100 games this year. So if you have, and Grandal's the other guy. So as of last week, Robert had 98 games, Jimenez had 77 games, Moncada 97, Grandal 94, and Tim Anderson 79. That's just not going to cut it. Like, it's just not going to cut it. So these guys, we talked about health, we talked about, wellness and everything like that, whether it's, the staff on hand, or it's just these guys keeping themselves accountable. Like, they've got to be on the field for us to win.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, I mean, they got to be on the field to win, and they got to actually then show up. I don't know how much that their injuries interfered with their performance. It definitely took like Moncada like a while to get going there. But when he did, it was great. But he definitely, his best parts of the season, he had more bad parts, I feel like, than good parts in the season. So the only other, I was just looking at also the farm system too, and I just also realized, I forgot that we also have 2 lefties out there. So we do have the 7th largest payroll, I believe, in baseball. So if Reinsdorf feels cheap, hey, look, maybe just promote internally with some athletic outfielder, or with Oscar Colas, or possibly Colson Montgomery. I don't know what the future holds for Colson Montgomery, but he did really well in Double-A. Whether we want to stick him either in the infield or maybe the outfield, depending on, I guess, the positions that we want to be choosing, and how we want to be putting in the certain players in the infield or outfield. So, but we'd love to see some sort of changing, more left-handed hitting in the lineup there. And then we'd also just love to see a healthy Michael Kopech too, because when he's good, he's good. I think he just had some surgery, so it's like, hey man, if he can just be there for a full season, God, I mean, he's got all the potential in the world to be, one of the best starting pitchers out there, but he just never seems to be healthy, and that's really a big thing, as we were pointing out before. So, but hey, worst case, he's an ace in the bullpen. I think has been always our whole thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think for Kopech, he just needs time to ramp up in the pros. I think they did a good job this year making him like kind of a bridge guy. He was injured, but definitely had a really good first half. For some of the other guys, just on the injury front, the one thing that I think as far as performance goes, like it definitely was impacting their performance just for the sake that like these guys were on the IL and off the IL often. It wasn't like you tore your ACL, you come back and like you missed 30 games and you played the rest of the season out. It's like this guy, hammy and then 2 weeks and then comes back 5 games back on the IL with something else. And it was like they never really established any sort of rhythm. And especially as a collective unit, it was like we were saying, we're always piecing together a lineup every night and the lineup kept getting shuffled and stuff. So it's just like, what is this team? What's our identity? How are we establishing ourselves? And you like kind of look over at Cleveland and like they've got, they had like Kwan, they had Rosario, they had Ramirez, and that was like set. And it was like pretty much set for like a long period of time. And just like that's how you got to establish like that continuity in the lineup. It's like you just know who you're banking on every game, and then people can start establishing roles. But like when we're doing the Lurie Garcia stuff at the 3-hole, and we were doing like Gavin Sheets out in right field experimentation, like just stuff can't fly next year. So like we just need to establish roles early and put these guys in their best positions to succeed. Stop stretching guys like Vaughn, having them play 3-4 positions. Like we just can't be doing that stuff. Like you got to say goodbye to some of our legends or make some room for guys that are going to be cornerstones for the future.
Yeah, no, for sure. 100%. And I think the key thing is just be healthy, be as healthy as you can. Every single player I feel like was on the IL of some sort of deal basically, throughout the season. And you can't just have that like do some load management or whatever you need for them to just play the max amount of games. But yeah, like you were saying, the continuity just wasn't there this season.
No doubt. Well, we'll do some more coverage of this kind of moving into the fall and the winter once we wrap up with the World Series and everything like that. But looking forward to a strong off season from our team, Rick Hahn, seeing where our next manager is going to be. So we'll definitely cover that. But we'll put that to bed for right now, and hopefully our Sox can bounce back. But I guess moving forward, we're going to look at Week 4 for the NFL. The first game we had was on Thursday night. It was between the Dolphins and Bengals. Bengals won 27-15. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass.
Man, that hit on Tua was sneaky, and I didn't really understand what was going on at first because I was watching, and someone got spiraled, and I was like, all right, like he got kind of whip tackled or whatever, and it wasn't until I got to see the replay when his head actually like just kind of banged off the turf, and then his arms went up, kind of rigor mortis style, and man, after Week 3 and kind of see him wobble around, and I think we were joking about it with like his back injury or whatever, like the fact he came out for Week 4. I mean, even for him coming back in the half of game, Week 3 was questionable, and running him out there for Week 4 also very questionable. Not sure if he would have had any sort of like other sorts of conditions had he not been like thrown off the turf like that, but just seemed kind of reckless with his health, and from an organizational standpoint. The second he went out of the game, which was a pretty sobering moment. The Bengals just took care of business like they should. I mean, they should be beating teams like the Dolphins, I think, as it is, being Super Bowl, representatives of the conference last year. I mean, they kind of came back, showed out, took control of the game. Miami moving forward, Bridgewater. I don't know how long this is going to last. I know it's going to last at least one more week, but they're going to be a very average team, I think, until they have everything in place. We're still trying to figure out who the Dolphins are with Tua, but with Bridgewater, we kind of know what the scenario may be. I just think super disappointing as fans to like get excited about a team player like Tua, because he just comes with like a lot of he's got great character. He comes with like a lot of fanfare, a lot of press because he went to Alabama. Like wanting to see if he could actually succeed this year, and just kind of going through this right now after being injured a little bit last year is just disappointing. But yeah, ditto on the Bengals. I think they'll be competitive. I'm glad they're getting back into it a little bit, but great air attack, and their defense played pretty well too.
Yeah, no, for sure. The Bengals they appear to be back on track, and figuring out getting that rhythm. I think initially they just I don't know if it was the whole Super Bowl losing the whole Super Bowl side effect, or maybe they were just not focused coming out the gate. So, but really impressive win. Beat the Dolphins, who were undefeated. And the Dolphins, man, they were beating was it the Ravens and then the Bills in back-to-back weeks. So they had some of the most impressive games there and looked like one of the best teams in all of football. So that's good overall, solid win from the Bengals in that sense. But yeah, with Tua, like I think Twitter was going crazy. I know there was some doctor who's like specializes in concussions, right? He was like kind of tweeting about this whole thing. It was like, yeah, like before the game, even he was like, yeah, Tua ought not to be out there, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves. And then this whole thing happens, and it's just not a good look, And it appears that the independent doctor that conducted, I guess, the concussion protocol test, got I guess fired from whatever contract he was with from the NFLPA. So it also showed like a lot of people don't know how the medical system works. It's like, yeah, they all thought it was the Dolphins doctors, and they were like the ones signing things off and all that. But no, it was actually it's actually an independent doctor that's hired by the NFL, or at least probably contracted from the NFLPA, from my understanding. So, and yeah, I think that's actually good for the NFLPA to be doing something like that. So, kind of creates that, or takes away that conflict of interest, if you will, between the medical staff and the head coaching staff and the player, because the player is always going to want to be playing, no matter what. That's just kind of how the mentality is for this level of performance for these kind of players. So, and then the coach, he's just gonna like, okay, if the doctor says yes, we're all good. So, and I think that's where a lot of people felt like was the issue, but it sounds like it was just some independent doctor, just, I don't know, was drugged up or doing something stupid or whatever. So, yeah, because I think everybody saw that it wasn't a back injury. I think somebody was pointing it out. Like, Tua was like trying to like shake off his cobwebs. He was like, shaking his head back and forth. He wasn't usually, when you have a back injury of some sort, you're usually holding your back. You're not holding your head or doing like this or whatever. So I think that was like the big distinguishment there. But Bridgewater, going back to I guess the football field a little bit, Bridgewater, veteran presence, did okay, I with when he was doing work with the Minnesota Vikings, and he's definitely been known as that person that really doesn't have like much of an arm. So it'll be curious to see how he throws that deep ball to Hill or to Waddle. But I think Hill even said, yeah, I'm fast enough to Bridgewater can even throw it to me. Hell, you random reporter, you can throw it to me. So put your money where your mouth is, I guess, Hill, but I think they'll be fine. It just might be limited, I guess, in terms of their offense, but overall, if they can continue kind of doing what they've been doing, as much as they can, with their with how the players has been performing, then I think they'll be okay. Maybe win a game, or if they can win a game or two while Tua is out, great. But I think the Dolphins, especially if they've been beating these top teams, I think with a couple of reps for Terry Bridgewater till he gets some practice in, I think they'll be fine. But we'll see about how this team progresses going forward, though.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I saw today was I was watching ESPN briefly, and a commercial came up. There was an NFL commercial promoting health and safety with football and concussions and stuff. And the second I saw it, I started like laughing to myself. I'm like, of course, that's like the commercial you guys are producing right now, like from that NFLPA firing of that independent doctor. it's like I think there was even more pressure coming toward the NFL to like really dig into this and like figure it out. And like usually I think they just fire somebody and they can just kind of move on. But in a lot of ways, like they're really having to put some extra attention on the situation because of really how much buzz it got. And the whole back thing, doesn't still make any sense because, Tua kind of even before, getting, pummeled, he didn't show any signs of like having any sort of, back injuries up to that point. So it's real puzzling. But in any sense, Thursday night game got us off kind of to a weird start. And moving into the next game, the Cowboys beat up on the Washington Commanders 25-10. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll grass this. I mean, I think I called the Cowboys for some strange reason. Again, I always say whenever they have their back against the wall, I feel like is when they perform, even when they have their back quarterback. And so Kellen Moore deserves, the Nobel Peace Prize basically for just, being able to keep this offense going. Obviously, the defense for the Cowboys, they're playing out of their mind. Michael Parsons, I think we both called it. Like he's probably the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. So they've just been able to move the ball on offense. Not do anything too cute. Kind of make Cooper Rush kind of be that game manager, if you will, and then just have their defense make some plays, create some turnovers whenever they can. So overall, it's just this is as solid as a team. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Like is there a quarterback controversy, with Cooper Rush and Dak Prescott? I don't know, but right now they're playing good football, and that defense I think is really the key thing there. And then just being able to make first downs, keep the ball moving on the offensive side, and that's really just been their recipe for success.
Yeah, I was trying to break this one down because I'm like, do I want to give Cooper Rush a lot of credit here, or do I want to rethink my Commanders' enthusiasm? And my pride is getting the best of me right now, so I'm gonna give 2 thumbs up to Cooper Rush. So like, great job on Cooper for like, I think honestly just coming into his role, stringing together some good football games. He's not turning the ball over. He's utilizing the weapons at his disposal pretty well. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is a guy you could just kind of continue to feed. You've got 2 backs in the backfield, could probably be starters for half the teams in the NFL. They didn't really show out in this one, but, like you're saying with the defense, if they're just going to shut down teams, like they don't have to do too much. I mean, this might be another situation like the Packers and the Bucks. I mean, for the Cowboys, I mean, I would not even come close to putting Rush in a category of the other 2 quarterbacks, but like, he does have to do a lot to get his numbers, I imagine. I just think like, just make the smart read, don't make that like, don't try to thread the needle if you don't have to, just wait for the next play and, feed it to Zeke or, drop it off to Tony Pollard or something like that, just to like get you a few yards, get you into, field goal position or whatever else. But, for the Commanders, I don't know, man. This is the curious case of Carson Wentz. Again, let's give it another week. I think they've got an easier opponent coming up for week 5. It's not. I think it's the Jaguars, if I had to guess, who may or may not be an easy opponent. I don't want to get too far ahead with that team as well. But man, just a terrible game for Wentz yet again. The running game not really getting established. I think they do have some playmakers on this team, but they didn't really, do much given, the limited yardage that Wentz actually accrued. And that defense is just getting like, ripped apart. Like I feel like every game now, they've been pretty high scoring games or one-sided affairs. So Washington really needs to get their house in order. If I'm just going to respect them as like an average team in this league, but so far it hasn't been so good.
Yeah, I want to see more Dotson. He's definitely gotten the touchdowns and everything. So I feel like they need to get him more in the actual field as opposed to just like the red zone essentially. So I think getting him the ball and then it seems like, and I don't know, I'm guessing is that maybe Terry McLaurin is kind of just getting double coverage or just trying to stop him, that's where, and I feel like Carson Wentz needs to be, looking at some of the other receivers, or the offense needs to be designing more around some of these other receivers like Dotson, and getting them in open field a little bit more. So, but yeah, need to establish the rush, get the ball moving on there, and the defense has enough talent to get stops and everything like that. But I feel like the offense just needs to get some first downs to have the defense rest, kind of the old school way. So, yeah.
Gotcha. In the next one, we had the New York Giants going over the Chicago Bears, 20-12. Wayne, pass or grass?
I feel like I've taken the Bears for grass for the past few times. So I'll leave this up to you, man. I will pass this.
Yeah, I don't think much of either team still. I mean, 3-1 for the Giants, 2-2 for the Bears. I think that those records are going to go south ASAP. I don't see much on either side. I feel like this was just kind of like, two, basement, dwelling teams kind of just scrapping together a game, and it kind of showed in the stat lines. I mean, Daniel Jones is not an NFL quarterback. I mean, Saquon Barkley, they better hope that he doesn't get re-injured, because they ran into him 30 times for 150 plus yards. Like, my hat's off to him as an athlete. I think he's a great player, but if that's the only option you have and he's already injury prone, I mean, he's going to get banged up probably at some point this season. Receiving core's kind of in shambles after losing Shepard, so it's kind of like, I don't think they like Kadarius Toney at all. I mean, they should just probably trade him, release him, do something with him, because they're just not utilizing him for his talents. If you could say one good thing, it's maybe their defense so far. If that's like the silver lining, I don't know if there's much behind that, or if it's just because they've played subpar opponents. But that was the only thing I saw bright spots for the Giants. I mean, for the Bears, looks like Justin Fields starting to pass the ball a little bit more. 22 attempts, almost got to 200 yards. Still no scores, no, I guess, interceptions this week, and Khalil Herbert had another good game. But I kind of said my piece last week about what I think the Bears' philosophy is going to be from an organizational standpoint this year. But yeah, man, not much to write home about with this one.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think Don Martingale is the defensive coordinator for the Giants. He's really been the reason why the Giants have been, so kind of how they've just been winning games. I think them mixture of that and Dable just game planning really, really well. I think it was, remember the first couple quarters, the Bears just couldn't stop like these bootlegs and these rollouts from Daniel Jones, and it's like he wasn't passing the ball; he was just running, and the Bears broke containment a bunch of times. And I think it was finally until like the second half that they're like, "Hey, maybe we just have like a spy." I think Brisker was kind of like the spy, kind of on the weak side whenever there was like a run play going on, and it's like, yeah, that ought to have happened sooner, because there were a lot of first downs and even a score, I believe, too, from Daniel Jones there. So, but yeah, good defense, good defensive game planning in the Daboll, just smart utilizing, like, hey, Daniel Jones, how about, if you can't pass the ball, just run the ball. We know you're athletic. So I feel like that's kind of like how the Bears ought to have operated more so with Trubisky. Just make Trubisky a running quarterback and have him, throw an occasional pass here and there just off play action. I think they game planned really well. They outsmarted, or at least in this case, a little bit outcoached. I think, we've been saying this all along. Like the Bears simply do not have the talent. I don't know what people were seeing beforehand. Like, it's very fortunate that the Bears have 2 wins. So that's great. But I think everybody's just been saying like they don't have the talent. And I definitely think that there's has to be something with Luke Getsy of not something's there with he doesn't believe in either Justin Fields or Cole Kmet or any of the players that the old regime drafted. Darnell Mooney had that one play, and that was it. They didn't attack off of play action or anything like that. They didn't attack the secondary as much before or afterwards after that play. So, why not take that shot? That is Justin Fields' strength. And there were several, there was always this, I guess, different takes on Justin Fields. Like he might have missed throws here and there. He definitely missed throws. He also needs to look at more, doing some check downs. The Luke Getsy also needs to design plays just to get his confidence up, whether they're, just a simple out pass to a wide receiver or a slant. Like nothing really was hit down the middle. Again, they didn't really utilize Cole Kmet at all. He caught 60 passes last season. Is he that bad of a, pass catching tight end? I know he's a good blocker, but come on. So, and then there definitely needs to be something done with Mustafa. Like, I don't know what it is, but I think PFF graded him as like the worst performing offensive lineman in the entire NFL. So if that's the case, then something just needs to be changed there. I don't know if we want to put in was it Lucas Patrick there, but he hasn't been performing well at guards. So I wonder if it's just like, maybe he'll do better at center. I don't know. Or maybe we look at Cody Whitehair back in there and then, keep Tevin Jenkins, has been our best lineman, I think, so far this season. So, and he didn't even start the game. So that was all questionable. So all around, just some things that, I think the team is still trying to figure out each other and like where to position everybody. And I'm hoping that, for Justin Fields' development's sake, that the coaching staff is able to figure things out sooner rather than later. Kind of talking about, somewhere what we're talking about with the White Sox, of just having that continuity of, figuring out where the best players can be and their best positions. So evidently Mustafa, we saw what happened last season, wasn't that good. As you see it this season, still not that good. And so something's got to change, I feel like, there. And and the game planning, I think, needs some reworking there too. So
for sure. Moving on to the next one, the New York Jets beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-20 in Pittsburgh. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll grass this. I think this was actually a pretty entertaining game, just for like, this year. It wasn't like necessarily the both teams are playing awesome football, but, just the amount of activity, whether it be some turnovers here and there. Like, there was that nice Zach Wilson. He definitely had some turnovers there, but he actually got rid of the ball when he could have got sacked. And that's actually one thing I actually want from Justin Fields more so is, you don't have to take sacks like all the time. Tom Brady is really smart about that. Like, you can just get rid of the ball, throw it, above the line of scrimmage or past the line of scrimmage, and see if there's a wide receiver, just throw it straight to the ground near them so that the defensive player can't get the ball. But there's that happened with Justin Fields on several occasions. I feel like where he took sacks where he didn't need to. And Zach Wilson, to his credit, actually did that, and I kind of smiled. I was like, "Oh, that's a smart play." So there's some nice plays there, some nice design gadget plays from the Jets. And Pickett now. Trubisky looks like is out at quarterback. Look, it's now Pickett. I like the chemistry between Pickett and Pickens, which I think that's a great name combo for quarterback wide receiver. So I think that with him getting more first team reps, I think that they'll progress there. I'm still kind of mad that we're seeing Pickens performing really well, and the Bears could have drafted him. Instead we picked Kyler Gordon, who's really underperforming. So, but yeah, I think overall though, good on the Jets being able to, I guess, get a win here though. So.
Yeah, maybe we could call Pickett and Pickens the "you pick two" combo. They could do some endorsements for Panera Bread. But no, man, I don't know. This one didn't feel like a monumental loss for the Steelers because I think they're really just that bad. I mean, I think without TJ Watt, causing havoc on the defensive side, without the leadership of whatever Big Ben was bringing last year, and it seemed like their line has just kind of continued to degrade season after season. This team's kind of a hot mess at this point. I feel like there's a lot of weapons, but there's not a lot of protection to like get the most out of those weapons, and there's not somebody to facilitate the offense to utilize the weapons to their strengths. So it's like now we have a receiving core that they've got Freiermuth and Pickens are stepping up. But you still have like the holdovers of Deontay Johnson and Claypool, who's just kind of been a ghost. So I feel like there's going to be some sort of trade probably coming sometime, maybe middle of the season, to maybe move Claypool or if you could move Deontay Johnson for some line help, like that'd be huge. Maybe a defender. I don't know what they could possibly net for him. I don't know his contract offhand, but this didn't feel like an upset. Is I guess what I'm trying to get at is Zach Wilson looked pretty confident for a guy who's not played a lot of football in the pros, number one, but then also kind of just starting his week in week 4. So to throw for 250, I know he had a couple picks, but like you're saying, getting creative with the offense and being confident out there and kind of leading this up and coming Jets team. I mean, Breece Hall, had a score, had a lot more yardage on the ground this week. So it's kind of like inch by inch, this Jets team, could be kind of exciting. I mean, I feel like the draft was, huge for them in the first round, especially, but, just to kind of come out of there with a lot of young talent to be excited about. I mean, maybe they're starting to lay some of those bricks and, for Trubisky, kind of crazy that he got pulled as early as he did. Not surprising, but in the same sense, it's like, hey man, like your rope is already gone and it's only week 4, so you're just thinking about like the confidence of what he kind of built up in Buffalo and kind of how quickly that unraveled, second he was back into, the fire. So we'll see what happens for the rest of like Mitch's career, let alone his season. But Kenny Pickett, first game in, got to give him, some time to develop here. But the 3 picks out the gate is kind of staggering. Wish there was a little bit more to go on to like kind of feel confident with a guy like that. I mean, obviously like he's got a long career ahead to figure all that out. But yeah, man, I just think good on the Jets for getting this W, and we'll kind of see where their season goes.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, I think with Pickett, there's, I think, hey, this is his first game. He didn't start, so didn't get all the first team reps, so didn't develop that continuity with the wide receivers. Some of those picks were like there. I think there might have been some miscommunication here and there. The last one was just the Hail Mary, so go figure there. But he did make some nice plays though with his legs, which was pretty intriguing there. So he definitely has that dog attitude. I did like. There was one throw that he did. I think he got knocked, but he just smiled at the defender, and I love it. After he got back up. So love that dog type of mentality. So first game, kind of just throw it out. Saw some good things, saw some bad things, but that's kind of what you expect, I would say. So
for sure. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Tampa Bay Bucks on the road, 41-31. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass this because this is a fun game. This is a very high scoring game. So
yeah, really high scoring. The score itself is misleading. This was the Chiefs game, I feel like, from start to finish. I mean, they were up big early. They were up big even late. And, this is the kind of statement game I think Mahomes has been probably thinking about since they lost the Super Bowl to the Bucks. But yeah, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had just a monster performance with a couple touchdowns. I'm sure you're pretty happy about that for your fantasy team, Wayne. Kelsey reestablishing himself as the tight end 1. We'll talk about another tight end who was pushing that, but had a huge bust week. But yeah, in general, hard to understand what to make of the Bucks this year as far as like a championship contender is concerned. I mean, this is them playing one of the best teams in the league, so that this is understandable. But just trying to get a grasp on like what's the upside for the Bucks this year. I love their defense before playing this game, but yeah, man, seemed like Brady actually had much better numbers than he's had all season. Maybe part of that is just his own pride, like trying to put up a good enough game to stay close to Patrick Mahomes. But when it comes down to just like the actual game itself, he got outclassed, and his numbers are fine, but in the same sense, it's like, what's this Bucks team going to be? Like, hopefully, it seemed like Godwin was back, so hopefully get him back into the offense and everything like that. But Wayne, did you have any takeaways even after like watching some of this game too?
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered most of the things there. I think Mahomes, I think he got bored and just threw that one interception. It felt like, I was like, why did he do that? But I don't know. I think he just got bored there. funny part is actually I didn't start Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Actually,
Oh no,
I know,
dude.
and I lost by like 1 point. Thanks to Cooper Kupp that last reception. So that I lost by 1 point in that one reception that he got at the at the end of the game. Got it. Yeah. I actually started get this James Robinson.
Same here, man. Same here. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought he was
Complete
gonna do
trash.
something, but no, he didn't. So yeah, I left some money on the bench there. But back to the game, I guess. Yeah, not the best game from the Buccaneers. I actually thought that their game plan terribly. They only had 6 carries or six rushes in the entire game.
Wow.
It's like, when you're going against a team like Kansas City Chiefs, right? You got to slow them down. You got to just not have Patrick Mahomes as much as possible on the field. And that's where, when you're passing a bunch, like that tends to be where you're going to lose there. So, and he had that one touchdown, but that was like a goal line thing, right? So didn't really have too much activity on the ground. And I think when you're going against a team like the Chiefs and you have Patrick Mahomes, like you need to just have him not on the field as much as possible. So I don't think that the game plan properly there. And Brady, yeah, got his stats or whatever, but that's just typical. I guess that's like a Brady lost stat line, like just a bunch of passes, for some yardage here and there. But yeah, in the end, a lot of it was just the Chiefs. I think they were up by a pretty good amount early on, and I think they're just like, hey, we'll give whatever points to the Buccaneers, but we're going to kind of play a little bit of prevent defense a little bit, just making sure that they just kill some time. So I think, yeah, good win on the Chiefs. Nice revenge type of game. And, at the same time, I think that was just a poor planning on the Buccaneers side a little bit more. But yeah, I think going forth, though, from the Buccaneers standpoint, I won't feel too terribly about it yet.
Got it. And the next one, we had Minnesota Vikings going over the New Orleans Saints in London. This game started pretty early on Sunday. I actually got to catch it at breakfast time, but Wayne, pass or grass?
Was that ballin' breakfast for you? Was it?
I was definitely balling at my breakfast. I was at the local Saratoga pizzeria here that does a breakfast special. So I had some eggs Benedict with some home fries. Our son was eating some steamed vegetables and some Greek style potatoes. And I think my wife copied me too with the eggs Benedict, but I got to give her a tip of the cap. But I kind of peeked over in both sides of my eyes and I kind of saw some football going on. And I did like a double take. I was like, is this like a replay of last week or something? Like, oh shit. Yeah. Like they're in London. That's right. Okay, cool. Like we got breakfast and some football here. So some ball and some breakfast. So for sure.
How about that? Yeah. In that case, I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah. Well, this was like, for me, the Greg Joseph game. I mean, shout out Greg Joseph, kicker of the Minnesota Vikings, for 5 field goals and 16 total points. I mean, that's a kicker putting the team on his back to win a football game, because there's not much else to say. I mean, New Orleans Saints are a really good defense, taking nothing away from them. Cousins got some good yardage, but not much going on passing wise. I mean, I feel like the running game was like respectable at best, but again, tip the cap to Justin Jefferson for a huge yardage and kind of reception type week. But it definitely seemed like the special teams stepped up in a game where Jameis Winston was down. We had the quote unquote QB1 Andy Dalton taking over for the Saints. Actually had a pretty respectable game on his own end and was feeding it to Latavius Murray, who's been on every single team in the NFL at this point. So looks like Chris Olave, another score, your rookie of the year, pick. So he's definitely showing out. Saints dropped to 1-3. That's kind of shocking. It's kind of shocking. The quarterback play has been pretty subpar, but that team's got just a lot of experience on its end, and like they just seem like a unified type of team to like drop to 1-3 at this point. So I think as far as next week goes, they got the Seahawks at home, and I think a lot of people were pretty excited about like the Saints bouncing back there. So maybe they can like hold this all together. But in general, well fought game by both sides. Minnesota going to 3-1 is pretty big too, just to kind of even themselves up with the Packers. But yeah, Wayne, do you have any thoughts on this game or either of these teams?
I mean, yeah, I think you said a lot of my points. I mean, Chris Olave, like I just love the guy. I in my opinion, I thought he was the best wide receiver. Like he can do the entire route tree. I think that's his whole thing. Like he's as good as a route runner, and he's fast too. But yeah, he's just as good of a route runner as anybody in this wide receiver class. In a way, I almost feel like they're kind of like looking past Jameis Winston in a way, and maybe they're going to draft a quarterback at the first round. Maybe that's their whole MO, what they're strategically trying to do, because they do have a lot of the talent. I think that's the thing about like what differentiates I guess a solid organization from like the Bears in a way, and how they navigate things. It's like you surround you get a bunch of good players first. And then you get the quarterback, and you kind of make that transition as smooth as possible, get them the weapons. So I understand, the Ryan Pace kind of put them in a hole with regards to salary cap and all that. So I get all that, but I think that could possibly be what the Saints are doing, is just having this, good overall solid veterans on both the offensive and defensive side with some young talent, and then maybe they do draft a solid quarterback coming out of this draft, and that's their future. So. Of which case, then you have a young quarterback and a young wide receiver and an Olave going forth. So just big picture thinking over there. But in this game, Vikings. This was kind of a Kirk Cousins type of game. I feel like where he wins actually. It doesn't. He doesn't do too much here there. He had that one interception, but he definitely kept them in the game. Utilized Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson picked up a touchdown, the rushing touchdown too. So good overall game for the fantasy owners there. Bounced back from last week. I think going forth though, I do think that the Saints should get a couple more wins here and there, but if they're relying on Dalton and Winston, they're definitely much more the game managers, I think, in their career at this point. So yeah.
Definitely. Next game, we had the Atlanta Falcons beating the Cleveland Browns at home 23-20. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass this.
Yeah, surprising game. I mean, I think we were both chatting about the Browns possibly going to 3-1 to start off the year. I think we had some pretty high hopes for that. I don't even know how the Falcons took control of this game, got the victory. I mean, it looked like Tyler Algier has been kind of a popular name now to like add as running back. Huntley, his backup, actually had 5.5 yards per carry too with a touchdown. So it's kind of like they established the ground game against the Browns, which is a little surprising, man. I thought they might go to the air game. Just considering like how I think stout the Cleveland Browns defense has been so far. So just a little shocking. I don't know. Having not watched the game and kind of tracking like, specific highlights from the game itself, I don't know what went wrong for the Browns. I mean, this seems like an opponent that even on the road, they should probably be, taken care of, given like the, just the overall like rating of the team and its talent stuff. But, Chubb had his like normal, workhorse type game, again, showed out like he usually does. But other than that, I don't really know what went wrong. If you have thoughts on the actual game itself, you saw any clips or anything like that, or watched it, would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I mean, the only thing I see, I didn't really watch it too, but the only thing I think I saw or see in the stat line here is the Browns had 7 penalties for it was about 51 yards, which isn't too bad, I guess, from the yardage standpoint. I think if it's 100 yards, it's like, yeah, you're definitely going to lose. But the Falcons didn't really kill themselves. They did have the one turnover, but they only had 1 penalty for 15 yards, which I guess is like some sort of rushing the passer or something like that. So I think that it appears that the Falcons, they just ran the ball through the Browns' throats in a way. Like Mariota didn't have a good game, so it really wasn't him. But at the same time, it appears that the Browns didn't really like take the game away from the Falcons in that sense. Brissett had a okay game, didn't get any touchdowns. Chubb had a pretty good game. Hunt had a pretty good game. But yeah, it seems like the penalties were the biggest factor here overall. And then yeah, the Falcons kind of just played ball control. So I mean, that's probably the way that to go, I think, for them going forward. As they don't have too much of a passing game now. So yeah.
Yeah. And any new thoughts on the Browns based on this loss?
I mean, this was definitely a bad loss. It was on the road. So I guess don't want to give it too much a flavor there, but you know, I think they just need to play a cleaner game, or you know, maybe have Brissett like go for a deep ball on occasion too. I don't know. Yeah, just not the best win or not the best loss for the Browns perspective. So yeah,
Gotcha. In our next game, Seattle was on the road in Detroit and pulled out a victory 48-45. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll grass this. I mean, it was pretty interesting. Like this was a shootout. Like holy cow! And I did have Hawkinson, so that was nice. He had a hell of a game. So, and at the same time, Geno, hell of a game. I think there's those memes of like, wait, what's Russell Wilson's stat line, and then what's Geno Smith's stat line? Like, Geno Smith's been killing it so far this season. So, the Lions definitely have. I think they have the number one offense, but then their last place defense in terms of yardage. So you definitely see where the issues are from the team perspective. In this game, they were without their two best weapons, right? I think with St. Brown and Swift, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like which I definitely liked. Hawkinson, he was going to get a lot of targets there. So yeah, I think it's great that Jared Goff. I feel like this is like the battle of the bastards in a way, right? Like Jared Goff was the one that they took him out, right, from the Rams, and then now he's doing better than Stafford. Granted, Stafford won the Super Bowl and they kind of needed him, but then at the same at across the other team, they picked Geno Smith now over Russell Wilson. So it's kind of like, hey, even though we're the cast-offs, we're killing it over our our counterparts, at least at this point in the season. So high scoring game, great game to watch, especially from the fantasy perspective. So but I think great win, I think, for the Seahawks for this time around.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of staying consistent after looking at this score of what I guess my thoughts were on the Detroit Lions coming into this year. Like I figured the offense would be much better based on how their line graded out. Their defense really poorly graded, and it's showing. Even watching Hard Knocks, I mean, looking at the Lions, it was like their offense would just put it to them in mini camp and stuff, and it would just get like Aaron Glenn all fired up, their defensive coordinator and stuff. So like it's just kind of showing out in the regular season now. Like it's already like hard on the Lions for having just like such a poor culture for, just losing and kind of accepting defeat in a way. Cause I have a lot of optimism about where the team could possibly go. Hopefully Goff can just have a great year at quarterback and like really build like rapport with a lot of these guys. Cause I think they have some fixtures in their offense if guys can stay healthy. It's just that defensive side of the ball just needs some time to develop. You need to bring over some fresh legs, some fresh bodies, maybe sign a guy or two. But maybe this is the start of something interesting in Detroit. They came up short and to the credit of Seattle, Rashad Penny had like a huge day along with Geno Smith. Good to see Geno taking advantage of his opportunity to be a starting quarterback again in the NFL. He's showing, not only with his legs, but also his arm, that he's like able to kind of be somebody you can trust. I mean, hopefully somebody you can, keep in that position for the rest of the season, if that's what, he's shown so far. So, whether or not I think Seattle is like a true, contender, no, not really. But in the same sense, I feel like, they're showing that they can be respectable. And I think that's enough to say. I mean, I feel like, defensively, they gave up 45 points still. Even if we do like where the Lions are going on offense, it's still, a huge score. So I don't have a finger on like their identity on the defensive side of the ball either with Seattle. So it's just hard to say, but you gotta respect what Gino's been able to do in the time that he's had so far this season.
Yeah, and I guess just one more thing to add. Tariq Woolen, that was a nice find from them. Drafted into the 5th round, like ran a 4.2, 40, had an interception in this game. He's been playing pretty well overall on the defensive side for Seattle. So there's at least one bright spot, I think, on the defensive side there. Even though, they gave a bunch of points over to the Lions. Just one shout out there from the Seahawks.
In our next game, we had the Tennessee Titans going over the Indianapolis Colts on the road, 24-17. Wayne, pass or grass?
I will definitely pass this. Yeah.
Yeah, Tannehill strung together 2 good games here. He's keeping his job alive. I mean, he's depending a lot on Derrick Henry, who's had like 2 blow-up monster games out of the backfield so far. So, that's encouraging enough. For them to get to 2-2, though, honestly speaking, I wasn't sure what was going on out of the gate. It seemed like they had just completely disappeared as a team that was a playoff contender, and they were the number 1 seed, I think, in the AFC last year. To now being 2-2, that might change my impression a little bit. Like, I'm not completely sold on them, but given how bad the AFC South could be, depending on what happens with Jacksonville and where Indianapolis goes from here. Maybe they can, yet again win another crown. It's kind of to be determined. So at least they put themselves back into, the running for it, because those first 2 weeks were so miserable to watch, just on their ends. Indianapolis, I don't have a ton else to say that I didn't say last week. I mean, Ryan looked pretty inconsistent in this one. Taylor is getting a lot of volume, but just not a lot of output. I think he also has an injury now too, to boot. So, just for the Colts, they got a lot of soul searching to do. I think they actually are playing. They aren't playing the Jacksonville Jaguars next week. They got them the week after. So, scratch what I was going to say. They got the Broncos next Thursday for the Thursday night game. But what I was going to say is that Tennessee now is going to play Washington next week. So that'll give them a good, probably like just a good transition leeway into getting above 500 and putting themselves back into contention. But I think I mentioned that Washington's playing Jacksonville next week. So that's definitely not the case. Nobody's playing Jacksonville next week. Get them off the list. But in general, don't know what my final takeaway is from this game exactly, other than, Tennessee's back into contention, and Indianapolis, really need to start firing some sort of alarm bells here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, the Colts are probably the most disappointing team, I think, so far this season. I think I might have picked them to win the division, if I'm not mistaken. So, they just been kind of just underperforming overall. Taylor didn't have a great game. Ryan definitely has been underperforming. But then, obviously, you got to give credit to the Titans. Didn't have the best start, but now they're pulling off some wins here. Tannehill. It definitely is something where I think it kind of it definitely shows the impact that AJ Brown had. He just didn't get off the gates as well. Didn't really put the stat line up too crazy here, but okay game, especially when you have Derrick Henry doing Derrick Henry things, I guess, overall. So didn't really make any mistakes this game, so it was definitely much more of a ball control type of win, kind of old school win for the Titans here. So hopefully, this maybe this is their new identity, but it is it definitely just goes to show, I think, that the impact that AJ Brown had for this offense and that they're missing. So hopefully then we see maybe more of Treylon Burks a little bit more. Or maybe, getting more continuity, I think, with Robert Woods, getting the chemistry a little bit further could definitely be helping Tannehill. But yeah, it just seems like they, from the passing game standpoint, just needed to find a little bit more continuity and that rhythm.
Yeah, definitely. I love that they call him Bobby Trees, Robert Woods. I just think that's a great nickname for that guy. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. Last point I was going to make on Matt Ryan is I feel like, because he won an MVP and because he got his team to the Super Bowl, I think he gets way too much hype for what he really is as a quarterback. I mean, maybe it's just because he's in like his tail years of his career. But I was actually just trying to look up, his stats comparative to like, Kirk Cousins and even Carson Wentz. I mean, I feel like Wentz is definitely the third best out of that trio, just looking at their stats overall. But like when I look at Cousins' stats over the last 4 years in comparison to even Matt Ryan's, I mean, I think Cousins got his number a little bit. So, I mean, it felt like when they made that trade, they were like start the parade. It kind of it was like, and I was like, wait, like, haven't we been watching Matt Ryan in Atlanta like with this last place team like the last 3 or 4 years? And it's just like maybe there's just a little bit too much respect being put on his name for him to be like still in the conversation for like a guy who can lead a team to a playoff, series or whatever else. Like I kind of feel like toward the end of Big Ben's career, they were giving him that same kind of praise, and we were all kind of shaking our heads, like wondering, like, are you watching the same game I'm watching? Because I know that guy won a Super Bowl and everything like that, but he's not bringing it like he used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least at this point in the career, and I'm looking at the stats too. Matt Ryan didn't have a winning season with the last, I think, 4 seasons with the Falcons. I know that they suffered some turnover on the defensive end and all, and there was definitely a lot of things that occurred, I think, after their Super Bowl loss. So, and it also like Matt Ryan always had like a bunch of weapons that like prime Julio Jones and everything, and a little bit of Ridley. So it's not like he was deprived of anybody. And Kirk Cousins, I think they definitely have some similarities there, where they are surrounded by a lot of talent on the offensive side, and it's like, okay, half their job is just getting the ball to those playmakers. They're just being smart, but Matt Ryan passed a lot. I think it was the biggest thing I've seen. I think he led the league in passing in 2020, 626 attempts overall, which is nuts, and 4,500 yards there. So, a lot was put, I guess, on Matt Ryan, and I guess it was just, hey man, just pass the ball and see what happens, and that was kind of their mentality. But yeah, they really weren't doing too much. Whereas Kirk Cousins, a little bit more of a balanced offense, with Dalvin Cook and all that. So, but yeah, and kind of a mediocre record as well. So definitely some similarities. I don't know which one I would take. Both are kind of, that fringe type of quarterback, I feel like. But yeah, right now, Matt Ryan's not playing his best brand of football.
No doubt. Next game, the Philadelphia Eagles went to 4-0 over the Jacksonville Jaguars, 29-21 in Philly. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll grasp this. I mean, I was kind of like trying to be bullish with the Jaguars, but they played like a young team, I think, this time around. Trevor Lawrence had like 4 fumbles or something like that, like ridiculous. I think they had 5 turnovers overall, and you can't do that against the Eagles. I think the one good thing is that I think they only lost by like 8 points, right, or something. So it's like they had all those turnovers, but they only lost by like a touchdown, right? Plus like a 2-point conversion. So it's like, I guess like that's one silver lining, is that they gave the ball there. They essentially lost the game themselves. So I think that is one credit, I guess, just show maybe if a silver lining for the Jaguars overall. It was definitely a rainy day, so hopefully, for their sake and Trevor Lawrence's sake, that the ball just doesn't slip out as much in the next game or the rest of the season. So, but yeah, turnovers really cost them the game. Eagles played fairly clean game. Defense definitely showed up. I think that's the one thing I've been seeing, is that this Eagle defense, is deadly. You talk about the secondary, you talk about Sweat, you talk about whoever, Fletcher Cox, like a bunch of just playmakers on the defensive side. And they, part of that was Lawrence, those turnovers was Lawrence just not handling the ball correctly, but you got to give some credit to that defense. So yeah, good overall team win, I think, from the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, defensively, Hassan Reddick, 2 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, a handful of tackles, QB hit, one for even a tackle for a loss. It's just like he was all over the field as a playmaker. TJ Edwards is also stepping up as just the guy who's going to, get into pursuit and take guys down. I feel like he's, accruing a lot of tackles week over week. But I actually thought the Jaguars were gonna, be in this or give it a run. I mean, at the start they got out to a 14-0 lead after the first quarter, just kind of tracking scores and seeing some of the highlights. I was like, wow, like again, screwy stuff can happen early on in the season, but yeah, in general, I feel pretty good about the Jaguars team, but like you're saying, some of their inexperience probably bit them in the butt. I mean, Trevor Lawrence going on the road in Philly, probably like one of the most hostile environments, and coughing up five balls overall. I mean, it's not what you want to see, but I think he can probably shake this one off as a good learning experience for him in his second year. And too bad for Doug Peterson. It would have been nice to see him kind of go back into Philly and get a big victory with his new team, especially with how they've been playing out of the gate so far. I'm really behind this team. I like how they go about the game and stuff, and even to compete with Philly, who I think now showing like they don't really. There's not a lot of holes here. They got to play maybe a more formidable opponent or two on the road, and I'll start getting pretty excited about them as a dark horse Super Bowl contender. But yeah, this season couldn't have started off any better for Philly.
Yeah, Philly's definitely I think they're the only undefeated team, if I'm not mistaken, right now. So, and they're definitely showing being one of the top contenders, I think, in the NFL. So, especially in the NFC.
Definitely, I'm fact checking, and you are correct, sir. They are the only undefeated team in the NFL still.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, and I think that the Raiders were the last team that was had no wins. No, I take that back. The Texans are still, I think, 0-3-1, right? So yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
That tie.
Stupid ties, man. Unbelievable. Our next game was an interesting one. I actually watched this one. Buffalo won 23-20 on the road in Baltimore. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll grass this since it's my AFC team, the Ravens here. Boo a 20-3 lead against the Bills. It's definitely one of those mixtures of the ball, the Ravens not being able to move the ball in the second half, and they just can't seem to close out games. It's ridiculous. And there's been made a lot about that whole the 4th and 2 in the goal line. I didn't have any issues necessarily with that call to go for it. I had issues more so with the actual play call. It looked like it was just kind of a drop back pass for Lamar Jackson at the 2-yard line or whatever. And it's like, why wouldn't you try to roll him out, utilize those legs so that he can kind of have that option to either run it in or throw a pass. I think there was some internal pressure that occurred, when he was dropping back, and that was he was just backpedaling, just kind of chucked it into the end zone, and then that turned out to be an interception. But it's if they just rolled out a little bit, or again, utilize his legs a little bit more rather than just being a drop down, then that's where I just feel a lot more comfortable, going for it on 4th and I think it was 4th and 2 at the goal line area. So again, I don't have a problem or issue necessarily doing that, especially when the defense was kind of just giving up points a little bit there, and the offense really wasn't getting, didn't have the momentum behind it. So I understand there was 4 minutes left, and eventually, Josh Allen did Josh Allen things. There was that late hit, I think, for Brandon Stevens that cost him 15 yards there too. So I guess they just didn't have faith in their defense, and there was definitely that scene of Marcus Peters just being pissed off at John Harbaugh, and it's definitely a demoralizing win. But I think hoping that the Ravens get their, I guess I don't want to say their act together, but being able to hold on to these leads against a quality opponent like the Buffalo Bills here. So that definitely would have been a good win, but made some bad plays and wasn't able to move the ball, and just some bad play calling overall. I think that happened at the end of the game there. So, but again, no issues with the play with going for it, just issue with the play call.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can see that the Ravens are probably going to be a surefire playoff contender this year. I mean, just in the playoffs as it is. I mean, but couple of close games away from being 4-0 too. I mean, it's it's like a game of inches. It almost comes down to like, these types of plays like you were alluding to with the 4th and 2 call. On the other side, I think just Buffalo seemingly being down this entire game. I mean, the momentum and just like the control of the game, Baltimore was stifling on defense. It was like watching Buffalo go 3 and out for almost the entire first half. I was just kind of in shock. Like, wow, like my guys are actually going up against Josh Allen in this fantasy matchup. And like, he's been completely shut out for this whole first half. I was like getting excited. And then, for Buffalo to just kind of have the poise to, stay in the game, put their heads down and kind of like really like fight their way all the way back in to take the lead. I kind of, I give them a lot more respect. I mean, I feel like they're starting to learn, like, it's not just about showing up and being part of, the dance once they get to the playoffs. It's like, we're actually like a good enough team now where we're going to beat anybody in this league. And like, we have the capabilities of coming back and like being the aggressor. And like, yeah, you could just kind of feel the momentum slipping out of the Ravens' fingers, the closer and closer it got to the fourth quarter. So, yeah, it's a big loss for the Ravens yet again, especially at home against such a formidable opponent. Like, to beat the Bills would have been like a nice, feather in their cap, would have been something they could get excited about, going through the year and playing more teams down the line. Now it's kind of like, maybe they kind of waver back and forth for the rest of their year. Maybe they lack a little bit of confidence in closing out for a while. But I think for Buffalo's, from their standpoint, after the Miami game just coming up short, like this was a huge victory for them, and like, yeah, will kind of establish themselves at the top of the AFC going forward here.
Yeah, big win for the Bills. I know a lot of people predicted them to go to the Super Bowl. They're showing that they're a really good team and everything. It's just, yeah, there's spurts here and there, whether be with against like the Dolphins, where they look a little lackluster. But when they show up, and they're just as good as any team in the NFL. And that's kind of expected with the talent and the coaching and everything that they have in place going forth. So, but yeah, it looks like the Ravens have Bengals for their next game, so that'll be a fun matchup. I think it'd be like, Ravens at 2-2. Are they going to go under 500 against the defending AFC champions here? We'll see. And from the Bengals standpoint, are they going to go under 500 too as well? So that'll definitely be a fun game, I think, going forth to see which direction potentially that these teams will be going this season.
Yeah, it looks like it's the Sunday night game too, and it's back in Baltimore. So it feels like the Ravens are going to come out and be pretty amped up for this one. But I'm sure the Bengals don't want to fall too far behind either. So we shall see this weekend. But in the next one, we had the Los Angeles Chargers on the road against the Houston Texans, and they won 34-24. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass this off to you.
Yeah, for me, I mean, definitely a must win for the Chargers in terms of, how serious they want to be this year. They took care of business in this one. They were up 27-7 at the half. Herbert was pretty much flawless. I mean, getting Eckler back into the game more was so important for them. I mean, for him to be like a tertiary option for them is just not going to cut it. I mean, he's got to be like the foundation of what they do on the offense with Herbert. Gerald Everett is having some good games here. He's getting touchdowns. He's catching a respectable amount of passes. I mean, he's becoming like, when Keenan Allen is down, they've got another, weapon that they can go to and kind of trust there. Mike Williams had a good game too, but no, I think, just in terms of like the games you need to win, like these are definitely those for, the Chargers. And I don't know, on the flip side, the only thing I can say for the Texans is just, Dameon Pierce is having, kind of a more established breakout of a season at this point. I mean, I feel like wasn't too sure what to think coming out of minicamp. I mean, the praise was heaped upon him. He was obviously moving up draft boards pretty high for fantasy and things like that. But how that translated to the NFL and actual football games, I wasn't too sure. But for him to do 100 plus yards, 20 plus carries, he's getting into the passing game more. He's putting up good stat lines as a kid who's, fresh out of college or whatever. So got to give him his respect. But in the same sense, I mean, Houston falling to 0-3-1, like you were saying, I mean, they're one of the worst teams in football. So, I mean, I think this is going to be just like a really tough, experiential type year for everybody on that cast.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think with the Texans, it's like, is Davis Mills the person? I don't know. We'll see. I've spoken, I don't say highly of him. It's like he's all right. But yeah, they're definitely the bottom rung of the NFL, at least at this point. So just gonna get some nice draft capital, it sounds like. With the Chargers, hey, it's great that now they're 2-2. I have high hopes for them. They definitely have a nice squad, for this year. I know they lost, I think, Rashawn Slater for the rest of the season, so that's very disappointing, from the offensive line standpoint. But they certainly still have plenty of weapons on the offensive side to make plays, especially with Justin Herbert, and Eckler is definitely like kind of like their quasi MVP, if you will, like where the team goes. I feel like is where Eckler goes, or vice versa. And that defense, I think, they definitely stepped up. Sure, they gave up points at the end there. That's kind of expected, and this kind of game in a way. But Bryce Callahan, I think I said he's best nickelback in the entire NFL. At least especially with this team and all the playmakers that they have on the offensive end. This defense is always going to kind of keep this team this team in games. So good overall win, I think, from the Chargers going forth, and hopefully that they keep some continuity going.
Yeah, one thing to note is Joey Bosa is also going to be out for 8 to 10 weeks. That's a huge loss for them too on the defensive side, because I know how excited they were about pairing him with Mac and some of their other acquisitions. But what a few analysts were talking about was how the Chargers set up their defense where they want to kind of take away the passing game, and they want to attack you on the edges. So they will give you yards in the middle. And with Pierce going for over 130 yards and James Robinson having a game against them, I mean, it feels like the Los Angeles Chargers might be pretty vulnerable against teams with good ground games. So, that's just something to be a little bit concerned about. Like if you've got Josh Allen, steamrolling ahead, or a Lamar Jackson, kind of showing, his skills on the ground or something like that. Like if they're going to leave that middle of the field open, it could be somewhat of a tough year for the Chargers on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think they were designed to compete against the Chiefs, which makes sense. But then guess who they're going in their next game? The Cleveland Browns. So,
oh boy,
that should be fun in Cleveland.
We love Chubb.
Yeah, they're gonna run the ball through their throats, and they have an awesome offensive line. So that'll be an interesting game. Kind of going against the Cleveland Browns' strength, the run game, and the offensive line versus the Chargers being kind of vulnerable up the middle. So, so that'll be a fun game.
Definitely. Next one, we had the Arizona Cardinals going over the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte, 26-16. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll grass this. I mean, I guess the whole quick thing is that thank God that the Cardinals got Marquise Brown. He's been making plays for them, caught a touchdown and everything. So it's great that they have him, and especially as Hopkins, is out for like half the season or whatever. So, and then at the same time, on the other side of the ball, Baker Mayfield just hasn't been making the plays. Just not making, had some turnovers, and he had a quarterback rating of like 60 or something like that. Which I guess for Bears fans, like that's a decent game. But yeah, just hasn't been playing overall that well. I think there was some miscues with DJ Moore, so they have some work to do for them. I know that their defense made some plays, but at the end of the day, the Cardinals made a little bit more plays, I think, obviously, than the Panthers in this game. But yeah, just good that they have Marquise Brown for Kyler Murray to pass it to, because he's really been showing up for the Cardinals this season.
Yeah, the Cardinals just still kind of seem to play down to their competition. I mean, the Frankie Louvu touchdown interception to the house was big. He had a great game overall. I think he had like 11 tackles too for the Panthers. But I mean, besides the Cardinals just kind of like playing some middling football out of the gate, Baker Mayfield is just not an NFL starter anymore. I think that's what we're, quickly coming to in terms of like takeaways and stuff. DJ Moore was interviewed throughout last week, and they were asking him pointedly, like, have you been getting open? Like, is he just missing you? And then, DJ was just so uncomfortable and like, smiling and just trying to like play around it a little bit. He's like, well, like, what do you see out there? Like, I kind of feel like I've been open, and he's like, just being very nice about it. But it's like, with Robbie Anderson kind of, even when Baker wasn't a Panther, kind of saying like, no, don't bring this guy in. It's kind of playing itself out pretty quickly. Like, and I don't even know who Baker Mayfield can kind of be. I mean, maybe he's a top tier backup. At this point, I don't necessarily know, because, it doesn't look like he's capable of keeping, a team in a kind of a winning situation. I feel like he's got a lot of weapons. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, brand new offensive tackle. He's got DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, other guys. Like, this is too much good to be putting up 16 points, in my opinion. Like, there should be definitely more to this offense if Baker Mayfield is actually what he says he is. So it's disappointing, but Carolina is definitely going to be in the cellar, I would say, for the NFC South and for the NFC overall.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like any Carolina Panther fans that are like, bring in Sam Darnold. Like, yeah, right. Like, yeah,
definitely not. Yeah, it's kind of sucks, man. It's like two straight mistakes, two years in a row, and they took a decent gamble with draft picks and stuff to get Darnold from the Jets, but man, I don't know. Like Matt Rule, too. Like, if he's some sort of offensive guru, he hasn't really showed it, at all. So this could be his final year too. Like, I don't know, maybe he gets fired mid-season or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. CMC is still upright. That's probably the only thing we can maybe be excited about if you're a Panthers fan. Like, he got way more work in the receiving game than the rushing game, which was like a flip-flop from where he was the first few weeks. So I don't know. It still didn't translate to a real competitive game out of the Panthers. And yeah, it just looks like they're going straight south. Next one up, we had the Packers beating the Patriots in Green Bay in overtime, 27-24. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass this.
Just a good show out from Bailey Zappi coming out and having, pretty awesome debut in Lambeau. I mean, that's a pretty harsh environment to kind of go into for your first game, especially when you're not, probably playing with the first team during practices and stuff and getting like serious reps and stuff. So, it's good on him to come out and do his thing. I think Brian Hoyer left the game with a concussion yet again, like another player who's, going through those issues and things, with the NFL kind of having to shore up. I don't know what they can actually do about preventing this stuff, but yeah, just the optics of it, I'm sure, even if he was not fully concussed or, whatever else, he's probably held out for all sorts of reasons. But the Patriots seem to have a really like strong running game. I mean, I think that's like their bread and butter. Like, they're going to rely on Harris and Stevenson like all year to keep them in games. I mean, Zappi was basically doing like the Mac Jones light, I want to say, just from the quarterback position. But from the Packers side of things, I mean, Aaron Rodgers had a better game. Alan Lazard was involved in the offense, and yeah, their two-headed monster, is also a thing. I mean, Dillon and Jones are going to be, a serious tandem to deal with, especially, just kind of keeping them in games down the rest of the regular season here. But with that defense, still playing pretty well for Green Bay. I think they're, a legit contender in the NFC, and it's just a solid win for them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, yeah, this is a good game for Green Bay. Would they have liked to have won by more? Sure. Especially with the backup, rookie quarterback for the Patriots. But yeah, the Patriots, they know how to just game plan. They're still smart. They're not the most talented, but they're when you have Bill Belichick, he just knows how like not to usually like hurt yourself. But it's nice that Green Bay, there's kind of becoming like with almost like the Browns like wannabe in a way, right? Like with good solid defense, two running backs that can just run down the throats of the opposing defense, and with Aaron Rodgers, and having then Deshaun Watson for the Browns in a way. It's like, yeah, it's having somebody that's capable of making a play or two, from the quarterback position. So, yeah, I think good win for the Packers, in overtime and everything.
The next one we had, the Las Vegas Raiders actually beat the Denver Broncos at home 32-23 to get their first victory of the year. Wayne, pass or grass?
I will grasp this. I think I might have alluded to in the last pod. It was like the Raiders, they just need to get the ball to Josh Jacobs a little bit more, and they did. So I think that's important for the Raiders, is to have that balanced offense a little bit. Not to say Derek Carr is a terrible quarterback, whatever, but if he's passing like 50 times or 40 times a game, like I don't think that's winning football for them. I definitely think that having Josh Jacobs, he's having a good year overall. So it was like I think he was averaging like 5 yards per carry before this game, and it's like, well, why aren't they utilizing him a little bit more? So they obviously did this game. And with regards to, I guess, the Broncos a little bit on their side of the ball, not terrible, but obviously the turnovers kill. It's so crazy. Melvin Gordon, he's like synonymous with fumbles. He has like 25 career fumbles in 8 seasons, and like I don't know, like there's got to be somebody that just goes up to him and is like, hey man, like just learn this one thing of like not fumbling the ball, and you'll be playing more, because that's kind of how he got kicked out of the Chargers right initially. So yeah, if not the best game in terms of turnovers and all that from the Broncos perspective. Okay game, I guess, from Russell Wilson, kind of what we're expecting from him. I know Sutton has some decent had a decent game and all there too, and Judy as well. So but yeah, Raiders run the ball, play good defense, make some plays here and there. I think that's usually the recipe for success for them. And hopefully, they learn from this going forth of like, this is kind of how we need to be playing, on the offensive side a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, good for the Raiders. Good for them to get their first win of the year. I don't know how much it changed my opinion of them off the bat. Yeah, a big game from Jacobs, obviously on paper. So we'll see where the Raiders take it from here. I'm still pretty skeptical about their outlook for the rest of the season as like a playoff contender. For Denver, this is the most amount of points they've scored all year, 23 points. I mean, you bring it over Russell Wilson, you've got Javonte Williams, Gordon in the backfield. Even Mike Boone had a decent showing in his time, behind center. And you got Sutton, you got Judy, just 2 weapons that I think most people, would love to have on their teams. Any quarterback would love to throw those guys. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know. It just, now that Javonte Williams is out for the year, we did go to Melvin Gordon, a recently signed Latavius Murray, who just played with the Saints last weekend, had a big score. It's like, man, they're taking away one of their biggest strengths, which is that ground and pound, but it's going to put a lot of emphasis on Russ and those wide receivers to get things going. So, we got to see what Nathaniel Hackett's made of at this point. I mean, he's getting criticized left and right from the fantasy analyst community, and just any of the NFL analysts I've watched. I mean, nobody's really behind this guy off the bat, so he's got a long way to go as a head coach in the NFL. But yeah, this isn't very encouraging for Denver. It's a big loss, especially in their division. But yeah, I mean, it's getting, I don't know how the rest of the AFC is going to shape up, but like they're on the outside, looking in for any sort of playoff spot at this point.
Yeah, no, and they're in one of the hardest, I think, most competitive divisions in the entire NFL. So, I know the records don't show it, but we've always said like this is probably like the most talented division, at least one of the most talented divisions in all of the NFL. So, any type of loss, like bad coaching or whatever is happening, like that really needs to be corrected as soon as possible. Because I feel like the teams are unless injuries happen for the injury bug catches on in this division, then it's like they can't beat these teams, I think, with the way that they're currently playing, especially on the offensive side. So
definitely. In our last game, Monday Night Football, the San Francisco 49ers beat the Los Angeles Rams 24-9 at home. Wayne, pass or grass?
I think I'll grasp this. Debo is like the MVP of that Niners offense. I feel like obviously and this was like a different. This definitely seemed like a Garoppolo type of game, right? Like didn't do too much at the same time, didn't like hurt you, right? Like made the plays. I think he had like 220 some odd yards, a touchdown. Good running from Jeffrey Wilson as well. Defense played solid, so obviously holding the Rams, like I think it was like to like 10 points or like under 10 points. So definitely from the Rams perspective, it's like, and I've kind of critiqued Matthew Stafford on this. Like, are there no other wide receivers? I feel like he just like looks at the same wide receiver. This was the same thing I guess I noticed too when he was with the Lions, like when they had Calvin Johnson. It was like he was just passing Calvin Johnson like 180 times a year, right? And he's kind of doing the same thing with Cooper Kupp. So, like I don't know what it is. He just feels like he can't look at another wide receiver. Feels like he's cheating on like his primary target. So I don't know what it is, but not the best game, not the best start, I think, so far this season offensively for the Rams and Matthew Stafford. I think they need to get the run game going a little bit. I know Cam Akers really didn't do too much. Neither did like Debbie Henderson as well. So, but I think they really need to open up that running game because if they want to be winning games, unless or Matthew Stafford looks at another wide receiver and decides to pass it to him. So one of those things has to occur. Allen Robinson, not the best signing. I think you spoke about that before. It definitely seems like Robert Woods would have been the better person, Bobby Tree, right? So, but yeah, not the best game for the Rams, not the best start to the season so far. And man, the Niners, they just own, I think, the Rams, right? I think Shanahan just owns McVay, it seems like. So, good win for the Niners going forth to set themselves up for the rest of the season.
Yeah, this is Niners football. It's kind of boring. It's kind of predictable, but they just, shut them down defensively. Managed a good offense. I think Debo's like that, secret weapon. He's kind of like a Swiss Army knife in a lot of ways. And then, like you were saying with Jeff Wilson, like just doing a good job at like, hey, being the backup running back, but like being a veteran at that and knowing what he has to do to just, get them a victory and keep them, going forward. I mean, I kind of like the fact that I grabbed him when I did, just even as a handcuff, because I'm like, this guy's capable of just having like steady games. Like he doesn't need to be like a superstar. He just needs to like do his thing, and he's pretty good at it. So, I mean, good on the Niners for just taking care of business at home, but like both teams are 2-2, but it's like, for me, I'm like so much more bullish on the Niners than I am the Rams. And, part of that is just like, my own thoughts going into this season about both teams. But the Rams just seem like a shell of themselves as of last year. I mean, if Odell Beckham Jr. comes back and they can sign him, they desperately need him because Allen Robinson looks done to me, like done. And it's too bad, man. He had a big drop, I feel like, on a game recently we were watching on a Sunday night. It was like, I think they tried to feed him twice in the end zone. He had like one really blatantly bad drop, and then the ball that maybe was like a little bit behind him or something, but it's like still catchable. It's like, I don't know what happened to the guy. I mean, hopefully he's not hurt or something, but could say the same too about Matthew Stafford. Like, hope he's not hurt. We kind of had rumors that he had arm trouble going into the years, so like, don't know if he's playing through any sort of pain, but like this has just been, pretty bad. And Higbee had a game. I think Cooper Kupp's obviously like the guy they're going to feed, day in, day out. I know Higbee had 10 receptions, so that was nice to see. But yeah, man, I just see it. I see this as a team that just won the Super Bowl. They ate. They're stuffed. They don't have any room for dessert, so they're just like, all right, like I'm gonna go to bed. But maybe they're just going to bed for this season. They'll come back in 2024 with a little bit more focus, I guess.
Yeah, With Allen Robinson, like I think he's been targeted. It was like 18 times so far this season, 9 receptions. So 50% catch rate there, which isn't good for somebody that I guess is like, that you got rid of Robert Woods and you signed this person as like, I think it was like 3 years, $40 million or something like that. So it's like not the best deal here. Hopefully they do, for the Rams' sake, I guess. Matthew Stafford and Allen Robinson like develop some sort of chemistry, but right now they just don't have any of it. And yeah, it is hurting the team. I do recall those end zone where Stafford did go to Allen Robinson in the end zone for a couple of times, and it's like great, but he only has one touchdown to show for it. And yeah, I think that's all I got to say about that. And if I'm a Niners person too, it's like, they're not really utilizing Kittle as much. Kittle isn't having the best season, so there is like room for growth. I think offensively for them is getting Kittle more involved in the passing game. If I'm the Niners, I'm actually okay with my position right now, at least compared to the Rams. So yeah,
gotcha. Well, that wraps up week 4. Our reactions, all the games that happened. We'll see what happens in this upcoming week for the NFL. But Wayne, did you have any other thoughts on football or anything else in general?
It is fall, and with fall comes pie season, I feel like. So, curious now, Pat, what is your favorite pie for fall?
For fall, I'm glad you made that distinction, because I love pie. I absolutely love pie. Upstairs, I actually have my favorite pie, and had a couple slices over this past weekend with the weather changing. We bought some apple cider too, heated that up, and just getting all into it, man. Watching Hocus Pocus 2 upstairs with my wife. Just quality Friday night staying in. But anyways, it's pecan pie. I absolutely love it, man. I love heating it up and like dropping some ice cream over the top, some caramel, whatever else. I can eat it straight too, but you love me some pecan or pecan pie, wherever you're from regionally. But Wayne, how about you? I'm kicking that one right back.
Yeah, I love a good no, I love pecan pie too. It's one of those, like, I don't rank it, but whatever, I don't think I've had like a bad pecan pie or whatever. So but my personal favorite pie that I've ever had is like a crumbled Dutch apple pie is what I like.
Solid.
Yeah, a la mode as well. So that for me, especially in the fall, like that just screams like, all right, bring on that weather, bring on the sweaters, bring on the hoodies, bring on the sweatpants, let's get to it. So but yeah, Dutch apple pie with a little bit of crumble on top for sure.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I do have another pie, but it's definitely not a fall pie, but it's probably my favorite pie. I don't know if I want to do trivia right now with you or just put it out there.
Put it out. What's up? What are you holding back? Dude,
yeah. key lime pie. Like key lime pie. Oh my God, dude. Like a original graham cracker crust. Like I went to Key West last year and went for a wedding for some good friends out here. But man, like key lime pie, I think we had like a couple rounds of it in different forms. There's even like key lime pie wrapped in like, kind of like a dilly bar from DQ, just like dunked in chocolate, but had like key lime as the base. I was like, oh my God, this is great. But I don't know what it is, man. It's definitely the graham cracker crust, but I think that lime just gives it like a nice, like sharp tang. It's pretty good.
Man, yeah. No, I love a good key lime pie. I don't think I've ever made a key lime pie. I feel like almost intimidated to make a key lime pie. I feel like that's one of those, I have to do some scientific research to figure out how to make a good one. Whereas apple, like I've made apple. It's all right. Like it's not that hard. So you just put some stuff there. Yeah.
I think the hard part is like, where do you get the key limes? Like if you're not based in Florida, like, can you go to the grocery store and get key limes? Like I'm not too sure.
Probably. I mean, I feel like you can go to the grocery store in America these days, but I feel like, yeah, it's probably going to cost like, $20 or something like that to get some key lime. Yeah.
Everything costs $20 these days. So
yeah. I think it'll probably be like in a jar or something like that, or I don't know, like a can is what I'm assuming. Yeah.
No doubt. But like speaking of lime, actually, just going to come from my final point, but I made some dip over the weekend. It was like a corned beef, or sorry, I don't want to say corned beef because that's disgusting. It was a corned bean like feta salsa that I like to make a lot with some apple cider vinegar, some olive oil, and then I usually cut up like some scallions in it and just kind of mix it up. 6 ingredients, very simple. But I've been testing it out with different chips, and I actually got the hint of lime Tostitos. And I was
Yeah.
like, you had those before?
Yeah.
Are you a
It's
fan?
good.
Thumbs
Yeah.
up? Okay,
Yeah.
So I was eating those things, man. I'm not kidding you. I was eating those chips. And I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, why does this taste exactly like Trix lime cereal? Like the actual limes that you have in the Trix cereal, I was like, I'm eating Trix right now by eating this stuff. So like I was sitting there and obviously like I'm thinking about our podcast and stuff because I'm having like I'm cracking up to myself while eating this stuff. And I'm looking at organizational charts. I was like trying to figure out, okay, Tostitos is tied to PepsiCo. So I'm like, where like who makes Trix cereal? Is it Quaker? Is it Post? Is it General Mills? And like I think the ultimate answer was it was General Mills cereal, and Quaker is tied to PepsiCo, and General Mills is like on its own separate wavelength. So I'm like, was there some sort of like license deal with like the Trix lime cereal and these whatever they lather these Tostitos in for the lime? I was like, because this thing tastes exactly like similar. And I'll say one thing, like number one, look at the org charts in the United States for every single food product you could think of, and like there are literally like 10 conglomerates that own every fucking thing you could possibly think about. Number one. Number two is when I made this whole search and I was going down this stupid rabbit hole by myself. I actually found a tweet from somebody in the Twitter verse that was basically like, hey, please hit a line Tostitos taste just like Trix cereal. And I seriously lost it. I lost my mind just laughing about Tostitos and Trix like the entire day because there was somebody else in this universe that actually pointed to it as well. But
You feel validated. You feel validated. You feel heard. I feel like.
Yes, I definitely feel heard. Wayne, you got to go try both of these options, both the chips and the cereal. I don't know. There might have to be some sort of ball and breakfast taste test. But it brought me to my next question, which was what I was kicked to you before we started talking about pie. But Wayne, what is your favorite cereal? What is your favorite bag of chips?
That is
no pressure. No pressure.
Yeah. So cereal. Wow. I feel like I've had different moments in my life where I like or appreciated certain types of cereal. The most sentimental cereal I've had is I would say Captain Crunch.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's solid.
Yeah, the peanut butter. I will say though, the most interesting like treat, like a Rice Krispie treat, is actually instead of Rice Krispies, utilizing the berries for the Captain Crunch berries and putting some marshmallows in them and making them look a little snack.
Oh man,
like
that is really good.
That is phenomenal. So, but yeah, I would say Captain Crunch, and yeah, I think the one I've eaten the most though is like, what is it? Honey Nut Cheerios, actually, because I was a fat kid growing up and I had a high cholesterol. So I utilized those Honey Nut Cheerios and lowered my cholesterol. So thank you for that. Yeah. Chips. Oh man. I'm a little bit weird in this sense, but I don't know if it's bougie or maybe a little bit white girly, but I love Sun Chips actually. Like
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm cool with that. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. That was rude.
Yeah. No, it's like the cheddar. The Sun Chips. There's the cheddar I like. That I can eat those things all day. The Harvest cheddar. Just give me like a full on bag and everything, and I'll obliterate those things. So
yeah. We grab the garden salsa ones from Costco every once in a while, and I swear that bag goes in like 3 days. But
yeah,
definitely a very craveable snack.
Yeah. I think that the Harvest cheddar is usually my favorite. I have had that one before too. So, I mean, they're all like really great for me, but I feel like I always gravitate towards the Harvest cheddar. It's like my vices are that, and my love for Sour Patch Kids too. Like when I have all those, my life is all good. I feel like,
I got you, man. No, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, man. I was gonna throw out like sweet chili Doritos for me. I've bought bags before and like locked my like when I used to live with people, I'd like lock the door because I would just like eat the entire bag and didn't want to get judged. But man, sweet chili Doritos, so addictive. I'll even throw a shout out for I've really been getting into like dill pickle flavored potato chips, and I just think like the ones that are like crunchier, like if they're like in a more crunchy kettle style potato chip with dill on it, it's like, man, it is so good. And on cereals, got to give a shout out. I think just all time like craveability. I think like Cinnamon Toast Crunch just always had that for me. But when you brought up sentiment and like the things that you thought about, like your favorite kind as a kid, like apple cinnamon Cheerios to me was like my go-to for the cinnamon. Not only just they were always at the house, but like I don't know, it was just that style of Cheerio to me just like always hit it the right way. But that's my piece on chips and cereal.
Yeah, it's like home, right?
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like I might have to go buy a box of apple cinnamon Cheerios now just to like get nostalgic over this next weekend coming up.
Yeah, I'm gonna eat like a 10-year-old, I feel like, this coming week. So yeah, gonna get some Sour Patch Kids. I mean, I normally do that anyway, so some Sour Patch Kids, some chips and everything, and yeah, that'll be my breakfast, in the mornings. So yeah, and then the cereal too, and then get some Captain Crunch as well. So yeah, all good.
Man, I don't know. We might have to just make one big episode where just seriously, all our favorites are lined up, and we just I don't know, just cheers to each single one of them.
We'll definitely have to do that. I feel like get the breakfast involved here. So yeah.
Sounds good. Well, that's about a wrap here for the Ball and Breakfast podcast. Thanks for listening to us. You can find us again on YouTube. Comment, definitely subscribe, like anything you're seeing. We're on Instagram as well, building a pretty nice following so far in only half a year's time. Seriously, keep following us and share with us any sort of, content you'd like to see here. But, with that, we're on Apple, Spotify, Anchor as well, Google Podcasts, wherever we are. Check us out, interact with us, and we'd be happy to kick it back with you. But we're signing off here with Wayne. I'm Patrick for the Ball and Breakfast podcast.
Thanks.